The Oklahoma Sooners picked up the 28-11 win over the SMU Mustangs. Why was it such a great win for Oklahoma? We'll talk about it on today's episode of Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started today. My name is John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. My buddy here is Josh Helmer. You can follow him on Twitter at JoshOnRef. The show is at Locked On Sooners. And Josh, we got a great win from the Oklahoma Sooners in week 2 as they knock off the SMU Mustangs 28-11.
And there will be some consternation about the offensive lapses at times. Probably folks feel some kind of way about whether you kind of love the Jackson Arnold package that was getting rolled out there, or if you'd like to see him throw out of it. I mean, there's a lot of offensive takeaways that we can dive into as well. But I just want to start here tonight, John. However you feel offensively, defensively from the football game, the one thing I don't think you can really debate is Oklahoma needed a win like this. This was an important win for Oklahoma in the sense that it got a little dicey. They were stressed. And this is a program that when it was pushed, when it was stressed a season ago, oftentimes they didn't answer the call, John. So to me, I just start there in this win to where, yes, it got a little nervy, got a little stressful, and Oklahoma, both offensively and defensively, late in the game, John, went and made plays to go win it. And I don't think that's any small thing coming out of this win.
No, not at all. You know, the Oklahoma Sooners were pretty much in control of this game for basically the entire thing. Only in the fourth quarter did it become a close game, and that's when SMU scored and then converted the 2-point play and made it 14-11. But listen to the drives after that touchdown and 2-point conversion. The Oklahoma Sooners then go on and score a touchdown. SMU, turnover on downs, 4 plays, 5 yards, turnover on downs. Oklahoma scores another touchdown. SMU, 13 plays, 65 yards, interception, and then Oklahoma runs out the clock and wins the game. So while, yeah, I mean, we're staring at 14-3 for the longest time through the second and third quarter, and you're not seeing Oklahoma's offense find much success. A lot of it self-inflicted due to penalties, a few dropped passes here and there. You still felt like, okay, Oklahoma's still in control of this thing. It's just not becoming this eruption of offensive explosion like we expected. Part of that due to SMU making some plays. Again, some self-inflicted wounds for Oklahoma's offense. But then when they needed to come up with plays, they 100% did. The defense shut the door after SMU got the score to make it a 3-point game. The Oklahoma Sooners then went on touchdown to close the game. So, I mean, we can complain about, okay, it was just a 17-point win, 17 points. That was the spread, just barely above the spread, but they covered in an area where Oklahoma struggled last year. Was 1, winning games, but 2, covering in games that they did win. Oklahoma's 2-0 against the spread now this year. So that's a really, really good start. Good teams win, great teams cover. And the Oklahoma Sooners, they covered. And it's just the way that they did it. They were clutch down the stretch. You know, the defense came through on the final few drives against the Mustangs offense. The offense came through, getting the score to go back up by 10. And then after Oklahoma's defense got them the ball back, they got another score to really salt the game away. Dillon Gabriel in the fourth quarter was really, really good. I know he wasn't great in the first quarter. I mean, I can break down the how it went by quarter for you if that makes you feel good. But he really turned it on over the final 3 quarters, and in particular in the fourth quarter was really good. So in the first quarter, Dillon Gabriel, 5 of 10 for 78 yards. Just averaged 3.9 yards per attempt. In the third or second quarter, 4-4, third quarter, 4-5. In the fourth quarter, when he needed to be really good, he was 6 of 8, 123 yards, and 2 touchdowns. 6 of 8 for 88 yards and 2 touchdowns. So again, everybody came through in the fourth quarter when they needed to, which again, as Brent Venables mentioned, is not something they would have done last year.
That's right. Yeah, guys stepped up and overcame some legitimate adversity that at times, again, was self-inflicted. The Guyton penalty, I don't know if there was a miscommunication or he just didn't know that thought it was going to be a different play where there's a run pass option. Maybe there was a run pass option on and he just took off downfield, but that wiped out what would have been a 24-yard touchdown to Marcus Major, but Oklahoma overcame it. Actually, they had the Rouse false start even after that on that drive. And then Jalil Farouk went and made a big-time play, which, really up until that point in the season, John, we're kind of waiting like, okay, when's Jalil Farouk going to show up for Oklahoma? And yeah, that was a big-time play that Jalil Farouk made, the little shake at the end to get into the end zone and on the money, on time and on the money from Dillon Gabriel on that play. You come back the next drive, right? You have the big conversion, or maybe it was that drive, but you had the big conversion to Drake Stoops, where Drake Stoops lunges to get that first down for you to extend that drive. So there were some key plays in key moments that Oklahoma needed in a game that all of a sudden got tight, and it's a field goal game. It's a little nerve-wracking, right? If you have to line up and kick a field goal there, and all of a sudden you even if the field goal is good, you only lead by 6 at that point, even though it'd been a great defensive day, John. Oklahoma didn't allow that to happen. So offensively, defensively, slamming the door late, I thought was really, really good for this team.
Yeah, a very encouraging sign. It's that, okay, the game got tight. Everybody kind of turned it up a notch and then closed out the game. Would you like it to be a 70-3 game every week? Absolutely, you would. But you won a game. You got close. You ended up taking over the game, taking control of the game when you needed to, and you won. I mean, there were some really, really big-time performances in this one. I mean, we can start, on the defensive side of the football if you want. Or we can even start with special teams, because what keyed that first touchdown? A big special teams play. This one coming from Peyton Bowen. That's 2 weeks in a row. The Oklahoma Sooners got a big time special teams play that led to a touchdown. Week 1, Gavin Freeman with the punt return touchdown. Week 2, Peyton Bowen sets up Oklahoma with a great spot in field position with the block punt. Angelo Anthony gets the touchdown. Oklahoma goes up 7-0. And that's what you got to do. If you're going to be a really, really good football team, you've got to win special teams, and you've got to get big time plays out of your special teams units. And yeah, we'll talk defense. We'll talk more offense on the other side of the break. But first, we're going to talk to y'all about Athletic Brewing.
Well, and that means it's time for our game changer of the week, brought to us by Athletic Brewing Company. And much like, the National Defensive Player of the Week, one Dannystzman, Athletic Brewing has completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good. That's what you want, right? Their brews are great tasting, they're award-winning, and they beat out full-strength beers in global competitions. No small feat. And oh, by the way, they got 50 different styles and counting of craft non-alcoholic beer, including IPAs, Goldens, sours, and more. So they are constantly on the move, creating new non-alcoholic beers that you're going to love, right? Which I constantly celebrate this fact of it. For those of us that are getting a little bit older, don't recover quite the same as maybe we once did. No hangovers ever. Period. Point blank. That's you can't beat that. You can find Athletic Brewing Company's non-alcoholic brews at a store near you, or buy online at athleticbrewing.com. First-time customers can use code LOCKEDON to get 15% off your first online order. That's code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. Near beer, exclusions and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all times. So, as we segue into just a full defensive deep dive coming out of this SMU victory, let's start here. I think Preston Stone's a pretty good quarterback. He made some throws out there, John, that under duress, accurate. He's the highest rated recruit in basically SMU history, at least in the recruiting era here, dating back to, turn of the century and everything. So I think by the time it's all said and done, we're going to look back and say, okay, that's a pretty good quarterback. Is he going to wind up being, a great quarterback nationally? I'm not ready to go out fully onto that limb yet, but I think he's a good, solid quarterback that Oklahoma saw on Saturday. Easily, I mean, obviously the best they've seen in these first couple of games, John. But Oklahoma defensively, for the most part, they bit, but they didn't break.
No, that's exactly right. Preston Stone did make some really, really nice throws that you're like, can't really do much about that. The scheme beat Oklahoma a few times as well. They got guys that were open, but what do good defenses do? Even after a team makes a play, well, you slow their momentum down and you shut it down. And Oklahoma was able to do that. And that's to me the sign of an improving Oklahoma Sooners defense is that the big play that they get doesn't lead to points every single time. Are you going to give up points? You are. I mean, until you show me that you're a top 5 defense in the nation, I'm just going to assume that you're going to give up points on drives sometimes. But that's not happening right now. Even after they give up a play, I mean, they allow just 11 points. They're not giving up points every single time they're giving up a big play or every single time they're hit with a big penalty. They're able to recover, show some resiliency, and get off the field. Again, another great day on third down, getting off the field. I want to say SMU was just, I got the stats right here. They were 4 of 16 on third down. So you combine that with what happened a week ago against Arkansas State. They're allowing a third down conversion just 21% of the time through 2 games. That's a huge improvement from last year. And that alone is going to make them a much better defense this year because they're just simply getting off the field. They're not allowing teams to go on these long 10, 12, 13, 15 play drives every single time they're on the field. And that's just going to make everybody better. We've already seen how the depth is improved, but also not having to be out there for 90 plays. That's going to make the team so much better throughout the season.
It sounds simplistic, and it is simplistic, but we said this all offseason for Oklahoma. If they improve on third downs, they're going to be a radically improved defense. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure some of this stuff out, but if you're just better in that department, okay, all of a sudden 123 or wherever you rank nationally, all of a sudden that's radically different. And Oklahoma's clearly through 2 games taken some legitimate jumps in that department. And though they weren't, of course, perfect in some fourth down situations, in a lot of them, they're pretty good, right? I mean, you get a big turnover on downs late. So in an area where Oklahoma wasn't great a year ago there either, they were pretty good in this football game when SMU made some decisions to gamble, which you're going to see that. That's just the nature of college football anymore. And sometimes you got to be willing to play 4 downs defensively instead of 3. There's no defensive conversation we can have, though, John. There's a number of names I could throw at you, but let's just get this one out of the way now. There's no defensive conversation we can have coming out of this football game without mentioning Dannystzman. I mean, he was incredible.
Absolutely incredible. 17 total tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, a sack, a quarterback hit, and a fumble recovery. I mean, what more could you ask for from your defensive leader than to have a performance like that? It's just absolutely incredible. And what's impressive to me also about really the Oklahoma defense, and this is part of the Dannystzman conversation, is that of his 17 tackles, just 6 of them were solo, which means, and you look at the rundown of Oklahoma's stat sheet, and they don't have a lot of just solo tackles. Everything's assisted because they're all getting to the football. They're all getting there. They're rallying. They're playing good team defense. But Dannystzman, I mean, he's on a trajectory, if he can keep this up, that he's going to be in an All-American conversation by the end of the year. I mean, he's having that kind of an impact on this team. And so much of it comes back to probably the conversation that he and Brent Venables had early, in the spring of 2022, when Brent Venables had to say, hey, listen, you could be really great at this, but you got to start taking it more seriously. Well, it's showing that Dannystzman is taking his craft very serious because he looks like a man possessed when he's out there. Brent Venables said it best after the game. He's all over the field and he's flying around the ball. Like, what better compliment can you have about your linebacker than you're everywhere and you're around the football all the time?
Right now, he's playing at a in the Butkus conversation level. I mean, when you go out and you have 17 tackles and a sack and a couple and a half TFLs in the game, yeah, you're playing at that type of level. And oh, by the way, I mean, he's the ringleader of this defense in a resurgence right now. Very early, Let's see what happens as the schedule continues to ramp up. But right now, the indication is, yes, this looks like an improved defensive team for Oklahoma. There's so many names, man, that impress defensively. Even the drive that SMU scored, John, you're not always going to get DPI on those 2 plays that Oklahoma got flagged for DPI, I don't think. And I don't think that they were necessarily bad calls on either Kanai or I believe on Bowen, but I don't know that they're always getting whistled in the SEC either. And that's not to say that there's some big conspiracy or this or that. I'm just saying that sometimes it feels like certain conferences kind of let you play a little bit more. And I do see where there are penalties on both, but I kind of almost like it a little bit because Oklahoma's in the spot to go make a play, which hasn't always been the case for Oklahoma in the past. So even the penalties at times weren't all bad for Oklahoma in this game. The Ethan Downs face mask late, not all bad, right? You're there to go make a play. So I think that that's one thing that I take away from the game. Obviously, you want to clean it up. You want to eliminate those, John, but even the penalties for this team right now are penalties that you can, I think, feel better about.
Yeah, they weren't the flailing because I'm lost in coverage type of penalties. They were you just kind of got caught hooking a little bit or just grabbing or tugging a little bit. And I think of the 2, the Peyton Bowen one was a little bit soft in my opinion. I felt like, maybe he had his hand on the guy, but he also made a play on the football to knock it away. Like, I don't know if you have much to complain about. This was a really, really good defensive effort. The penalties, they're competitive penalties. You're not jumping off sides. You're not, getting caught, face mask and, getting the face mask every single time. I think you can live with some of these. They're not getting penalized like they were a year ago. You're not automatically getting called for DPI because you're just so far out of position that all you can do is grab the guy. They're kind of 50-50 calls. You can keep the flag in your pocket if you're the ref and be justified. You could throw it and be justified. So I think there's definitely something to be gained from, okay, you gave up the penalties, but you were still in a good spot to make a play on the football, and that's okay. It's just sometimes you get beat, and that's just the way it goes. And sometimes you get away with those plays. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Another player I thought played a really, really good game was Key Lawrence, man. The competitive nature that dude possesses was evident on that strip of Jalen Knighton. Jalen Knighton just off to the races, big gainer, 40-something yards, I think it was. And, Key Lawrence doesn't give up on the play, gets there. He's got the running back and then just swats down at the football and forces the fumble. And then 2 really heady plays coming after that. Again, a fantastic awareness by Key Lawrence to try and get the strip. And then Woody Washington to put his hand on the ball to make sure it doesn't go out of bounds. And then Dannystzman to recover it in such a way that it doesn't go out of bounds. Like 3 very heads up plays to force that fumble. Just, again, situational awareness was huge there.
No doubt. And given the fact that SMU goes and scores a touchdown on the next drive, any takeaway is going to be gigantic. But given just how the rest of the game played out, punching that football out for Key Lawrence was a gigantic play in Oklahoma winning the game. A couple other guys in one other name I really want to highlight defensively, but it's worth pointing out too that both Bowen and Kanai, who I'm talking about a defensive DPI penalty on both, man, they did some really nice things in coverage at times. Bowen was, had the hand directly in the late turnover on downs. But one other name that I thought defensively was really, really good in this game for the most part, John, was Kanai Walker. Thrown into the mix with the injury situation to Gentry Williams, and he answered the call.
Somebody that they were very high on last summer, coming out of fall camp, but didn't really kind of get his way onto the field. Now he's seeing some meaningful snaps and proving the coaches right that brought him in from the transfer portal. He's got the length. He's got athleticism. This is a great time to start building that depth. I mean, you hate to see anybody injured, but to have the depth that they have and being able to rely on a Kanai Walker against a good SMU offense. I know it's really easy to downplay how good they were offensively, but think about this, Josh, and for our viewers out there, if you haven't heard this stat yet, I want to share it with you. The last time SMU was held to 11 points or fewer in a football game dates back to 2017 when they were held to 10 points in the Frisco Bowl by Louisiana Tech. That was the last time this SMU team, I think when I counted it down, it was more than 60 games, and maybe only 1 or 2 times were they held under 20 points in that same time frame. So Oklahoma's defense did a great job against this SMU offense, and a lot of players made a lot of plays. You know, I think you can still see that there's room for improvement and ways that they can continue to get better, the pass rush being one of those areas. But as a whole, they're playing a really, really good defensive style. They're playing really good team defense, and they're showing so much more resiliency and intestinal fortitude, you know, whatever, mental toughness, whatever you want to call it, that when they give up a big play, it's not all she wrote on that drive. They're able to rally, recover, force a field goal attempt, force a punt, force a turnover, and get off the field. So a lot to be really, really positive about with the defense and even with the offense. And we'll talk a little bit about the offense here after the break, but I think there's a lot to be encouraged by right now with the Oklahoma Sooners. First, let me talk to you about our friends over at FanDuel. Hey, if you're looking to get on the action this NFL season, go to FanDuel. They got incredible offers at America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. I mean, that offer alone for the NFL Sunday Ticket package is completely worth your time and worth your $5, because that is a worthwhile endeavor to have the NFL Sunday Ticket available for your TV watching experience on Sundays. So now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use, and you can bet on everything from spreads to player props and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Let's talk offense, Josh, before we get into the stuff that happened after the game. I feel like the offensive performance is being a little bit overblown, and you might disagree with that. Yeah, they had only put up 14 points through 3 quarters, but I feel like thinking back on it, reflecting on what they did, it seemed to be a very, very conservative approach from Jeff Lebby and the offensive staff, where they were just wanting to run the ball, run the clock out, take up as much time as possible, or maybe not as much time as possible, but just run the ball and play a conservative style that wasn't going to give SMU an opportunity to capitalize off of turnovers. And it's hard to tell in a broadcast view what SMU was doing with their safeties, but my guess is that they were playing soft and they were playing deep, 2 safeties deep, 3 safeties deep in an event to keep Oklahoma from beating them deep. I have no real complaints. You scored 28 points. You came through in crunch time. Got a big game from Kanai Walker on the ground. Could the offense have put up more points? Possibly. But again, some self-inflicted wounds in a game where they were going up against a conservative defensive approach. Oklahoma came in with a conservative game plan. They didn't force the issue. And I think you can take this as a positive. Dillon Gabriel didn't force the issue. He managed the game well, took what was available, and Oklahoma won. They won the game.
And what were the numbers that you ran down for Gabriel closing the game? I mean, I know that he was much more accurate from what the second through fourth quarters. He didn't miss a lot out after the first.
Yeah, so from the second to fourth quarters, he was 14 of 17 with the 2 touchdowns and like 130-something yards. So very efficient. Again, 14 of 17 over the final 3 quarters. In the fourth quarter alone, he was 6 of 8 for 88 yards and 2 touchdowns.
I think Oklahoma got a little bit too into let's do some designed quarterback run at times with Dillon Gabriel.
Yes.
So I think that's one of the mistakes that to me they made offensively in this game. And obviously it was, we're going to try this Jackson Arnold rushing package. At times it was successful. You can't say that it was totally unsuccessful, but probably they fell a little bit too in love with that. So my suggestions or, gripes or complaints would be going forward, just stick with the ones. Let Dillon Gabriel go run this offense. And here and there, if you want to bring that Jackson Arnold package out, okay, great. Now you've got it. Now you've put it on tape. But generally speaking, if Dillon Gabriel is your number one quarterback, and this is the guy that's going to be running the top offense for Oklahoma this season, John, just let your offense stay out there. Just stick with the ones.
Yeah, I agree. I think they just went to the well too many times. It was fun to see, and it's great to get Jackson Arnold some game reps. At the same time, do you want to put your future through the grinder like that? Every time it's a 4th and 1 or a goal line situation, probably not. I think you want to deploy it some, but you don't need to go out there every time it's a short yardage play, unless at some point you plan on letting him throw the football, because it's a disservice to this team and to Jackson Arnold if you're only going to put him out there to ever just run the football. No, take advantage of his arm, let him and use that to set up some other stuff too. And maybe maybe it's a plan to like, hey, when we put Jackson Arnold, it's going to be quarterback dive every single time or quarterback counter every single time, so that in the future, that's what teams are sitting on, so that then they can, pop one deep or run a counter play with the running back or something like that. But you got to, I don't know. I want to see it a little bit differently. And I'm like you, I think it does disrupt the rhythm of the offense a little bit. Again, an offense that's very much based on pace of play and up-tempo rhythm. To slow it down to make that substitution, I think it just kind of throws things a little bit for the loop. But I don't hate it. I just don't want him to go to it so often. And I think with the Dillon Gabriel run game, he's good in a scramble situation. I don't want to see him running as many read options as they call out there, because yeah, he can do it, but I don't know. It just puts your quarterback in danger. And against SMU, I mean, that was a pretty solid run defense that they faced. But Tawi Walker, man, he was doing a really good job against them. I don't see why you don't want to just give the ball to Tawi Walker and just let him run it. And I get that the run or the read option allows the quarterback to make the decision there. But sometimes you just want to line up, turn around and hand the ball to your running back and let him go make a play. And a lot of times it worked on Saturday night. But the quarterback run game, man, it was a little bit, I don't know, again, going to the well a little bit too often with that. Let your quarterback throw the ball or let your running back run the ball. That's what they're there for.
And not really playing to Dillon Gabriel's strengths. I know that you want folks to respect the fact that Gabriel can run a little bit, and he did. I mean, he had a couple of situations. I'm thinking back to I think it was a 1st down and 20 snap after a holding, and Gabriel tucks it and runs it and cuts that in half, right? And all of a sudden in 2nd and 10, and that was a nice run from Dillon Gabriel. But he's not the guy that a lot of times you're going to go out there and do a designed quarterback draw with, or he's going to be super effective in the read option game. I don't think. So to me, a little bit less of that. Just let him wind up and get it to these skill guys that are going to go make plays for you. But hey, they survived, they advanced, they got stressed a little bit, and they went and made plays when they had to make plays, which again, offensively, John, right as we discussed off the top, I thought was the most important part of all of it for Oklahoma, is that they got put into the cooker a little bit and they came out the other side.
Yeah, and we'll have so much more to say about the offensive side of the game, especially as we go through the week in our live show Monday night, 9 p.m. Central Time. But we got to touch on the big elephant in the stadium. Art Briles coming down to join Jeff Lebby on the field. A picture taken by our guy Parker Thune, OU Insider, kind of caused the uproar on social media late last night. And Josh, it's just an unfortunate circumstance that it was even part of the story, because it was a good win for the Sooners that was clouded by Art Briles' presence. And nobody would have ever known had he not gone down to the field. And we can talk forgiveness. We can talk, how long does somebody have to deal with what happened in the past? And if you know me, I've got a faith background and I do believe in forgiveness, but forgiveness doesn't remove consequences from action or lack of inaction or lack of action. This is part of the cloud that covered Jeff Lebby when he was hired, which I talked about back in the winter of 2021 to 2022, whenever he was first hired. Talked about it on this show, talked about it with the Locked On Big 12 Roundtable crew. And yeah, it was always going to be something that was going to be there in the background, but an unfortunate way for the background to become the foreground. And it doesn't sound like anybody in leadership at the University of Oklahoma is all too pleased with what went down. And we'll hear more from Jeff Lebby on Monday morning when he meets with the press. But his response to the question just showed a guy that has either no interest in the PR ramifications of this for the university or doesn't care. He has no interest in what the administration thinks, or he doesn't care.
I'm sensitive to the reality that Art Briles is Jeff Lebby's father-in-law, that they are family. I'm sensitive to that. I'm understanding of it. Jeff Lebby has to understand that Art Briles simply can't be around this football program. It's just that black and white. Regardless of how you feel about whether the situation unfolded in a just manner for Art Briles, or if you're totally the opposite and you think Art Briles is kind of guilty without, however you feel about it, right? If you feel that Art Briles, and many do, was a part of one of the worst scandals in the last however many years in college athletics, the bottom line is he has something attached to him, which is he was a part of a horrible, he's attached to directly a horrible sexual assault cover-up at the University of Baylor. Right, wrong, or indifferent, however you feel about it. And I get family, but he can't be around the program. It's just that simple. To have Art Briles around the program damages the program. And if Jeff Lebby doesn't understand that, if there were prior boundaries that were in place and those were breached, then yes, some sort of repercussion, some sort of punishment is in order. And to double down, not even beyond the press conference, but to double down and to make the meeting with your father-in-law and your kids, your social media pictures, shows to me that you're not empathetic to any potential victims out there, that you're not empathetic to really the situation in general. So that to me is probably, honestly, maybe the most problematic part of all of it for Jeff Lebby is the doubling down. But we'll see what happens, what transpires here. It's not a good look for Jeff Lebby. It's not a good look for Oklahoma. And I do think that he's harmed the reputation of Oklahoma here in the present. And we'll see what happens next.
And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be around for our live show Monday night, 9 p.m. Central Time. Follow Josh on Twitter at JoshOnRef, myself at John9Williams. The show is at Locked On Sooners. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all platforms. Hit that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. But until next time, he's Josh Helmer. I'm John Williams. Boomer Sooner.